Hello, I'm Trey and welcome to another of my colouring tutorials. In this tutorial I'm going to attempt to colour in this unicorn, and I'm not very good at animals, so this will be a good learning exercise for me, and hopefully anybody that's watching this will also pick up some tips. The design is from a Colour in Heaven magazine and the artwork is by Leonhard. Now, I have done one tutorial already using this design, and that was to do this wall, so I'll put a link in the description for all the other tutorials if you want to check that out. I'll continue to work with Marco Renoir Pencils with this design. Sorry about my voice, I'm a little bit croaky today. Don't know why. So this colour scheme, I try to keep it quite limited. Basically use 4 colours, and it's kind of muted, but that's okay. I fancied a muted design. I normally go for quite bright colours. So the unicorn, I've decided to do the body of the unicorn in browns and the mane and the horn in pinks. So I'm going to do the body of the unicorn first, and I'm going to try to work out the lightest sections on the body. There are some lines to help me a little bit. I'll use those a little bit and see how it goes. I'm going to go for the obvious light sections first. I think this section here, the top of the nose, the head, would be lighter. Top of the ears. And if I use a light pressure on all of this, I'll be able to adjust as I go along, which is always an idea I always do, because I'm never really 100% sure how it's going to turn out. And I can rub out a little bit then, if it goes very wrong. So around the nose, the nostrils, I'm going to highlight that bit there. And the section here I'll put lighter. In the middle, the bottom of the jaw. Now this section here I think will be darker, so I'm going to put lighter in the middle. Just rough, it's nothing exact. Now we come to this section, the top of the unicorn. Now where the hair hits the body, that will be slightly darker, but I'm going to put a highlighter here. And I'm going to put one here. I'm just trying to use the lines a little bit really on this, because I haven't got much idea where my highlights are going to be. I'm not looking at a light source for this. I mean, this is me trying to learn how to do this. Now, as it comes away here, these creases, I think they will be darker. There's a lighter section here, I think. I'll put that in and see how that works out. I'm looking for creases where I think there might be creases and a little bit falls or overlain section. Now, I'm going to put a bit of light in this area. And here. Now when I come down to this section, I think that will be darker, and it'll be darker so far, so I'm going to put a light section here. This is this part. This here might be slightly heightened. So I'm trying to think of the body of a horse as well, how it works, you know, where the joint of the legs are going to be, the hips. I'm using these lines a little bit to try and work that out. Now down here would be darker, but I want it to come lighter as we go further up. So I'll put a little bit of light in here. Now I always find it difficult when it's nice if you've got a frame all the way around a design, because then you know where your edges are. But this one, the frame doesn't go all the way down, so I'm kind of guessing where the part of the unicorn would finish. Just kind of like guessing there. Now that's just a rough idea of where my light sections are. Probably going to get changed, altered. I'll put some dark in now. I use my medium brown and start around the edges mostly and things that overlap. So if I start down here where it will be darker, these lines I'm going to make darker for this section. Now it might be a good idea to leave a bit of light there, so I'll leave it uncoloured and put in light later. And now that's moving into the light section, so I'll stop there. This is darker at the bottom. And we did have lighter coming up here, so I'll extend that. Again, I might fill in that with lighter. Now this section here, I've got light there, so I'm going to highlight that by putting dark around it. And that dark can meet up with this dark here. Now then, I'm thinking, now I'm putting some dark, that might be lighter. So I'm going to extend that lighter brown down. Again, I can go over this lighter brown with darker colours if I feel there's too much light. It's just adjusting it as I go along. Now there's a section here I didn't colour. I was thinking there'd be dark sections, so I'll put in some dark sections, following these lines a little bit. There's some here. I'll put some dark in there. I'm looking at the shape to see if I think there's enough dark in. Yeah, I think it would work quite nice with a bit of light there. So it's this light section here extended up. Now this underneath here, the neck will be darker, so I'll put this medium brown down. I'm going to follow that line there and extend it as such. And above that line, I'd put a little bit of light in, but I'm going to extend that light now. around here at the back of the head will be almost creased, so there would be shadow in there. I'm going to darken that in. And of course it's overlapping the lighter areas as well. It can be smoothed out as you put more layers down. So I put a lighter section there, so I'm going to put a darker section around it. Now I'm going to work up the back of the head and put some darker sections in behind the ears and put it in where the mane joins the body of the unicorn. I'll extend that because there's some lines there, and that will extend that down a little bit. Now I'm going to move on to the ears, and inside the ears would be darker, and around the bottom I'm going to darken it in. There's just a little bit shown on the other ear. Okay. Now where the mane overlaps and the ear overlaps, that's going to be darker. So I'm going to colour in between the mane and round the edge of the mane. Now this lighter section I put here, I'm going to be putting darker around the edge of the head. So I'm going to put that in now in case I need to extend the light sections. I'm going to do the same with the bottom of the jaw, and underneath this section here where the mouth is closed, outline that. Inside the nostril, make it darker, and around the nostril, and this is to highlight that light section there. Go around the edge a little bit there. Now there's a heightened section there, and that's where the eyelid is. I'm going to put lighter on there even though it's partially covered, because I don't want to be too dark there. I want to show a difference between the bottom of the eye and underneath, which is going to be darker. Right, I put a lighter section there, so I'm going to go around that lighter section with darker. Join in with this bit. Now I'm going to extend the lighter sections a little bit. I have put some here, some lighter sections here, so I'm going to now join that up with bits I'd left because I wasn't sure about. Overlap them slightly with the darker brown. This is just very rough. I can adjust it as I'm going along. So don't be too worried if you do this kind of thing. It's fine if it's scruffy at first because it's just giving you an idea where your layers are going to go. Now at this point I can look at it and see and look if I think my shading is in the right place. Now what I've been trying to do is create heightened sections to give that slightly beveled effect. You do the same with faces and bodies, and so I've done darker sections to highlight the rounder section, the lighter sections, because dark goes back and light comes forward. So I think I'm getting a little bit of an idea now of where my darker sections are going to be. Now I'm using my darkest brown now, and like I always do with my darkest colour, I go around the edges of a design. I can always go back and do it, extend it if I need to. So I'm just going to go around all the edges where I feel it would be darker. It's all the edges and folds and overlapping sections on this design. And what I also did with this, where there's a crease, I feel, that's nearest to the lighter section, I've put those in dark too to highlight the lighter sections more. So now I've got my first few layers down. It's giving me an idea of where the darker sections are going to be, where my light's going to be. Now obviously that needs a lot more layers on the body, so I will do that off camera and then come back to this. Now I put down another 2 layers of each of those colours, and then I did a light blend with Zest. And the reason I use Zest with these pencils is because they're oil based, and I found them to be quite difficult to use with baby oil. So I did one light blend with Zest, and one of the things that I noticed with Zest is it blends all the colours in, so I lost a little bit of my shading. So then I went and did another layer of each of those colours, and then I did another blend with Zest just lightly. I put a lot down, and that is what I've finished with for the body. I'm just going over some of the lighter areas, and I feel it's worked quite well. Yes, I've lost a little bit of my shading, however it's still there. There's still enough there to highlight and darken the sections I wanted to. and it works quite well. I mean, I've never coloured a horse or a unicorn before. This is my first attempt, and I kind of followed the same rule I do with everything else that's for shading. You know, what I want to look heightened, I put light on, and what I want to look darker around it, I put darker sections, and that gives you that, you know, illusion of depth. The shading I put in originally, I pretty much stayed with that. I felt it was, you know, reasonably good. I didn't do much adjusting at all, really. Now there's a lot more layers could go down on this, and that's personal choice. It would deepen the colour and make it look smoother. But I'm quite happy with the several layers I've got. So that is the body done for the unicorn. And now I want to do the mane and the horn. And I've decided to do those in the same colour, in pinks, just to make them look a little bit different, stand out a little bit. And of course it's a unicorn, so I can get away with having pink mane and horn. I don't have to go with browns or a different, you know, natural colour. So again, I'm going to use the same pinks I've used for these flowers. Is a light, a medium and a dark pink. I'm going to do my highlights first, and then I can put in my darker sections, so where I think my highlights will be. So for the mane, I'm going to try and do highlights for the ends. And maybe some bits that are what I think is kinked upwards. It's very similar to how I've done hair. And the horn, I put the highlights on the sections that are kind of bent towards the top. Or if you want to check out how I do hair, there are tutorials on that. So again, the link that I'll put in description will show you where those are. You can try those. Now use my medium, and I'm going from the parts that's nearest to the body and extending towards the lighter sections I've just put down. Overlap slightly into that lighter section. Now some of this, the mane, hair in the mane is kind of underneath, so I'll put those in dark. Now with the horn, I'm going to be darkening this edge first. And then I'm going to darken in around the edge of each, almost like a curl. And with this artwork, there's a little bit of line work there to guide. And I've decided I'm going to extend the lighter sections right to the top. Now I'm going to use my darkest pink, and I'll be going along the edges of the mane, this close to the body, and also where it's darker. If I see anything in darker sections, I'll darken that in as well. And the reason I darkened in some of those sections, because I wanted to give the impression of layers of hair. So if I darken in some of them, it's almost like they're folded and layering on top of each other. Because the lighter sections will look like it's further forward and the darker sections further back. Now with the horn, I'll just darken in this edge. And best I can, it's difficult at the thinner bit. And darken in the edge of each folded section. Now that's all the first layers down, and you can get an idea already of how it's going to look with the highlights and the shadows. So I will do some more layers on those sections off camera, and suddenly realised I forgot this bit that's coming down here, and I'll do that off camera. I'm just going to be doing this section the same as the top, highlighting what I think is folded up, and the rest of the shading. Okay. Now I put 3 layers down of each of those colours, and then I did a light blend with a blender pencil because it's a smaller area, and I tend to use a blender pencil on smaller areas. The bigger areas, I feel the blender pencil is too much like hard work, and so I much prefer to use solutions for bigger areas. Now after that light blend, I put a little bit more of the medium pink down, and now I'm going to just darken in the darker sections. And I'll just go over the lighter sections again. The lighter colour on this pink is a big contrast really to the rest of the pinks I've used, but I still like the effect. Sometimes I go for a more subtle effect by having the colours closer together in gradients. And that is the unicorn finished. And I've never done a unicorn before, and I hadn't done a horse before, which is basically a unicorn is a horse with a horn on it. And I'm really pleased with how that's turned out. So it's been nice to challenge myself as well. A lot of the colouring I do is to relax and to help cope with anxiety and the effects of trauma. So giving myself a challenge sometimes is really good for me. It helps focus my mind. So I hope anybody that's watched this, I've got some hints and tips. If you have any ideas, if you have any queries or feedback, please do post them. I would love to read them. So this is the end of this tutorial, and I'll come back soon with a new one in the near future.